It was late in the afternoon and I had just finished my shopping at the mall. The parking lot was nearly empty, save for a few cars scattered around. As I walked toward my car, I noticed a girl standing near one of the pillars, looking disoriented and a little out of place. She was in her 20s, but her clothes were torn and her face was covered in bruises. My first thought was that something was wrong, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She looked at me with pleading eyes, then took a few hesitant steps toward me. "Excuse me, can you help me?" she asked, her voice shaking. I need help. Please, I don't know what to do." I could see the fear in her eyes and part of me wanted to help, but something about her posture, the way she was speaking, it didn't feel right. There was an eerie calmness to her voice that made me uncomfortable. "Are you okay?" I asked, glancing at her bruises. "You should probably call the police." She shook her head violently. No police. They'll hurt me if they know I told anyone. Please, just help me." Her words didn't add up. Her voice was panicked, but her demeanor was oddly stiff, like she wasn't fully there. I looked over her shoulder and noticed an SUV slowly pulling into the parking lot. It was a dark, tinted black car moving slowly, and it caught my attention immediately. Something about it sent a chill down my spine. I tried to keep my composure and looked back at the girl, trying to decide if I should stay or leave. Then I saw her glance toward the SUV and her eyes widened just for a moment, before she quickly looked away, avoiding my gaze. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. This was a setup. I didn't want to get involved. But as I turned to my car, I noticed the SUV was now moving closer, and the girl was still standing there awkwardly, not saying a word. I opened my car door and called out to her, "Get in, I can give you a ride somewhere, just get out of here." She stood there silently, looking like she wanted to speak but couldn't. Her face was frozen in that same strange expression. The SUV was almost to my spot now and I felt the panic rise in my chest. Something was off, and I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in my gut. I slammed the car door shut, looked at the girl one last time, and drove off, my heart pounding. As I left the parking lot, I saw the SUV follow me for a few moments, then it abruptly turned around and headed in the opposite direction. I didn't stop until I was on a main road, far from the mall. My hands were still shaking when I finally pulled over and called the police. They told me to report everything, but they never said if they found anything suspicious. I couldn't shake the feeling that if I had stayed, things could have gone terribly wrong. Sometimes I still wonder what would have happened if I had tried to help her more, if I had insisted. But my instincts told me to leave, and I did. Trusting them that night may have saved me. It was around 2000 when I was an exchange student in Xi'an, China. My friend and I decided to explore the city one night, around 10 p.m. We were staying on a busy 6-lane street, full of foreigners, but we wanted to find something local to eat. At an intersection, we came across a small shop where we bought a snack. We tried to ask for directions, and that's when we met her, a young woman, maybe in her late teens, who spoke decent English. She said she could show us to a good, cheap restaurant, so we agreed. As we walked with her, the atmosphere changed. The bright lights faded, and the streets got quieter, darker, and more run down. We were the only foreigners left. She kept chatting with us, asking personal questions. Where we were staying, how long we were in town, what we were doing. She even mentioned a few times that she was 21, but something didn't feel right. After about 15 minutes, we arrived at a small, hole-in-the-wall restaurant tucked in a prefabricated building. Inside, it was cozy but strange, with only 4 tables, a counter, and a video game machine. The food was incredible, huge bowls of ramen and dumplings for dirt cheap, but the vibe was off. The other patrons? They looked like characters from a crime movie. One had a scarred face, another had a broken nose, and a third wore an eye patch. To make things worse, a group of young guys in matching leather jackets kept circling the street, eyeing us like hawks. When we finished eating, our translator reappeared, eager to take us to a fun place. She mentioned parties, beautiful women, and young girls. But when we saw those leather-jacketed guys again, it was time to leave. We made a quick exit, but she followed us, trying to persuade us to stay. Her frustration turned to panic as we walked, faster, finally making it back to the main road. We said goodbye, and the eerie feeling lingered long after. Looking back, maybe they were all just locals, but the whole thing felt off, like we narrowly escaped something we didn't want to be a part of. Trusting our instincts, we got out just in time. I was traveling alone, staying at a hotel in a city I didn't know. It was supposed to be a peaceful getaway, but everything changed one night. Around 8 p.m., I decided to go down to the hotel bar for dinner. The place was mostly empty, but I noticed a man sitting at the bar watching me. He smiled and came over, asking if I was visiting the city alone. I politely said yes, thinking it was just small talk. He introduced himself as a local, telling me he worked in hospitality and that he could show me around the best spots in the area. At first, it seemed innocent enough, so I agreed to chat for a few minutes. But then, his questions started to feel invasive. He asked where I was staying, how long I was in town, and even what kind of work I did. It didn't sit right with me, but I didn't want to be rude, so I kept the conversation short. He quickly changed the subject, offering to take me to a great place nearby, saying it would be a fun night out. I politely declined, but he didn't seem to take no for an answer. He insisted, and when I turned him down again, his tone changed. He said, "You're missing out. It's a private place, very safe. I can have someone drive us." Something about it felt off, but I didn't know why. A few minutes later, I started to get a strange feeling like I was being watched. As I glanced out the window, I saw a black tinted SUV pull up right in front of the hotel. The man didn't seem to notice, but I knew something was wrong. My heart started racing, and I quickly excused myself. I walked toward the elevator, but I could still see him watching me from across the room. I got in the elevator and rushed to my floor, but before the doors closed, I looked back and saw the man heading towards the lobby, his phone in hand. It was then that I realized he was setting up the situation, maybe trying to lure me out or get me into that car. My instincts screamed that this was more than just an awkward encounter. It was something much darker. I didn't feel safe anymore. As soon as I was back in my room, I locked the door, called the front desk to make sure I wasn't being followed, and stayed in for the rest of the night. I never saw him again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something much worse. I didn't know who was in that car or what would have happened if I had gotten in. But I do know that I trusted my gut and left, and I never went anywhere alone again without being extra careful.